It's 3 minutes past 8. You're listening to LBC. It's Cross Question, our weekly political panel debate show. Let me introduce my guest to you. Rachel Sylvester is a columnist for The Times. Kate Hoey, Labour MP for Vauxhall and co-chair of Labour Leave. Andrea Jenkyns, Conservative MP for Morley and Outwood and a member of the ERG. And Baroness Susan Kramer, Liberal Democrat peer, former Transport Minister and former MP for Richmond Park. They're here to take your questions. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call if you have a burning question that you'd like to put to the panel. And we are streaming live on Facebook, on the LBC Twitter feed, on YouTube and the LBC website at lbc.co.uk.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Now, you might think that it is the European election, so we're only going to take questions on Europe and Brexit. But if you have other things that you'd like to talk about, you might want to talk about some of the subjects we talked about in the news hour there. This scheme in Northern Ireland, which I know Kate Hoey is very interested in, and also maybe the Alabama abortion law. We're going to be talking about that after 9 o'clock as well for a phone-in. But let's go to the first question. Peter is in Maida Vale. Hello, Peter.
Oh, hi, and good evening, panel.
Hi.
Hello.
Now, why don't a small group of trusted backbench Brexiteers from at least two parties come together and produce a redacted version of May's deal and then put it to an indicative vote?
What would the point of that be? Because it would have to be agreed by the EU, wouldn't it?
Anything's going to have to be agreed by the EU, but the EU are going to change and move after next week's vote, I think you'll find.
Andrea Jenkyns.
Hello there, Peter.
Hi.
The thing is, we know the withdrawal agreement is dead. She's brought it back several times. We're hearing she's going to be bringing it back again, and it cannot got cross-party support. So I guess this is why you're bringing the question. There was something in the House that could have commanded a majority. There was a Graham-Brady amendment which protected Northern Ireland, and so I'm afraid it's been a case of the Prime Minister hasn't really been listening. There was also the Malthouse Compromise, which was a compromise. I mean, as a Brexiteer, I didn't want to extend the transition period by a further 12 months or pay more money. And it was a compromise on both sides. But I'm afraid it's fallen on deaf ears. So this is where we are, unfortunately.
Do you think there's any version of her deal that could get through the Commons?
I'd be very surprised. I think, if anything, in the Commons, especially that we're seeing polling out there that is so unpopular, the withdrawal agreement, I think actually it's hardening against the deal. And Labour, why would they actually support and prop up the government? They are the opposition. Why would they want to, actually align themselves with a deal what's so unpopular in the country? So I can't see those talks getting anywhere, just for the fact that they are the opposition.
And what happens if, when this comes back to the Commons in a couple of weeks' time, it's going to be a withdrawal bill, a piece of legislation, not just a meaningful vote. What happens if it's voted down on second reading?
Well, I think we're seeing it's perpetual Groundhog Day at the moment. I mean, it's pretty sad at the moment. Yesterday was the first time we voted in about 5 weeks, which is crazy. We've got a zombie government at the moment, I'm afraid, and an opposition who's not effective either. So it's a sad state of affairs for our country. But who knows what's going to happen next? I think regarding the Prime Minister's premiership, next week's Euro elections, we're going to find out what happens next. And then there's a pivotal moment then, the 15th of June, when the National Convention, the volunteers in the party get together and decide on Theresa May's future. I think we're going to keep seeing the deal come back while Theresa May is in charge.
You sound a bit like an opposition yourself.
It's very unfortunate. It does feel like that at times. And it was I was the first person in May last year to actually resign from government to actually speak up for Brexit. 'Cause I've been on the Brexit committee since its inception, and I saw the mishandling of it, and I just thought we've missed a great opportunity for our country. And I wanted to start speaking out. And it has been difficult. It's been a personal journey for me to get to this stage, but I can see when I was on the Leave campaign for the 52 constituencies in Yorkshire, when I've had people coming to me my age, 45, saying they've never voted in their lives before.
Is that where I say you're never 45?
Absolutely. I'll come on here again, Ian. So when they said we've never voted before, and I feel we've got a stake in our country's future, I've actually got a voice for once. We cannot let these people down in these northern constituencies.
Let's go to the 46-year-old Susan Kramer.
You can't even reverse it and be right. I'm older than that. You know that I support a people's vote. And I think, ironically, that if May wanted to attach a people's vote to her proposal, she might well be able to get a majority in Parliament for that. Would be interesting indeed. But I do think that in the way things are now, Parliament is split the same way that the country is split. We are going to be stuck in a mire, and this isn't going to get resolved until, frankly, it goes back to the people. That is the only possible route.
This is where I always have a problem. I had Emily Thornberry on last night for an hour, and I put this to her. I said, how does another referendum solve anything? Because if you get the same result again, you're back to square one. How does that solve anything?
I don't agree that you're back to square one. I think there's a very different atmosphere when you've got real knowledge that's available to people. I mean, we've spent 2.5 years. People now know more about Europe. I know much more about Europe, much more about the EU, much more about our relationship.
You're assuming, therefore, the result would be reversed, and I think that's a very big assumption.
I think even if it wasn't reversed, you would at least say that people had facts in front of them that nobody had at their grasp before.
But then we get another 3 years of dilly-dallying, negotiation, whatever, and then, we know more after another 3 years. Do we then have another referendum?
Well, I assume that the scenario is you have May's deal, which is, clear, you're then out and you're into a transition period, versus staying in. That seems to me fairly straightforward, fairly clear. And
that would not be accepted by Kate Hoey, would it, Kate?
But I'm just saying it might well be accepted by a majority in Parliament if you attach the two together. Yes, that my personal view is a people's vote is the necessary part.
Well, in the end, of course, it's what the public voted for, not what in the end what Parliament. We gave the decision over to the British people, and we voted by 498 votes to actually say we would leave with or without a deal. This is what I can't understand, because everyone says there's no majority for anything in Parliament. The two things we've had the biggest majority for are obviously to invoke Article 50, then to actually say that we would leave on March the 29th without a deal or without an agreement. A treaty. It's a treaty. Let's talk it. It's a treaty, not a deal. And thirdly, the Brady Amendment, as Andrea said. But going back to Peter's question, there is a lot of cross-party working goes on this issue. Andrea and myself have appeared on all sorts of platforms all over the country, and I think that what really we are saying is that in the end, this is not about party. It really isn't about party, and that's why we're seeing so much of a shift in how the public mood coming up to the EU elections is, because they are fed up with the way that the main parties have handled this. And
do you think, I really want to challenge this. Can I challenge part of this?
Hang on a second. We have to let Kate have her say first. But going back to the question, do you think that there is any that Theresa May's deal could be tweaked to be acceptable to anybody? I mean,
I think, Iain, we know that without the change to the backstop, that immediately rules out a huge swathe of people in Parliament who are not going to vote for anything that actually is the beginning of allowing Northern Ireland to be treated absolutely differently and to set up that border down the Irish Sea. Now, that will not happen. Even if that happened, there are still going to be difficulties, because we all know that there's an awful lot in the agreement, the treaty, that I would be unhappy with. But without the backstop, I don't know why she's even thinking of bringing back a bill, unless she thinks that somehow people will be misled into thinking that the bill is different from a vote in terms of.
Let's hear from Rachel. Now you've been covering this about the same length as I have, and we often come to different conclusions on some of this. But what do you say to Peter's question? Do you think that there is any version of Theresa May's deal which could ever get through the Commons?
I can't see it. The problem is both the Brexiteers hate it and the Remainers hate it. So it's from the Eurosceptic side, it's seen as a pretend Brexit, not the real thing. And of course, from the pro-European side, people don't want to leave in any case. So it's very hard to see how it gets through. And I can't really understand why she's bringing it back, apart from a sort of last desperate throw of the dice. And the other fascinating thing, I think, is how both main parties have been equally damaged by this whole fiasco. So the government, the Conservatives, look totally incompetent. They can't even get stitch a deal together. But Labour looks equally kind of game playing, if you like, because Jeremy Corbyn doesn't look like he's being straight talking on his politics, whatever he promised. So the sort of long-term fallout for politics, I think, is really quite significant.
Can I challenge on this?
Go on.
I tell you, this is the thing that it annoys me, because I keep sort of hearing it in the media. The people are protesting that they want Brexit and they want it now. I'm hearing endlessly from people who are saying, we want to stay and we want to stop
because
Brexit.
Because you live in southwest London.
Yeah. You need to go north to the northern constituencies.
I also talk people up and down the country. I've got colleagues there. We've been running in local elections up in the north and in the southwest.
How
we are not limited to one narrow corner in what we hear.
How do you account for the fact that the Brexit Party, from a standing start, are now at 34% in the polls, and if you combine the three Remain parties, they don't even get to 30%?
Well, that's not the numbers that I heard today.
And the Brexit Party has got 100,000 people paying £25 in a very short space of time.
Put it another way.
We have more members than 100,000.
Put it another way. Change UK started before the Brexit Party. Their campaign has been a disaster. They're on about 3 or 4% in the polls, and the Brexit Party are on 34%. Does that not tell you something?
I think the Remain vote is out there. It's large. I think still many people who Remain are trying to cling on to voting Labour and now beginning to understand that that is a party that's trying to negotiate a Brexit, not to remain in. So there's still many Tories who find it very, very hard to step away from the Conservative Party, even though they are fundamentally Remain. I think trying to narrow this down gets you to the argument that what you actually need is a clear vote on this issue.
Andrea Jenkyns, are you going to vote for the Brexit Party next Thursday?
I'm a Conservative. I can't vote for any of the
party. But you'd
party.
like to, wouldn't you? Secretly, you'd quite like to.
I can see.
In fact, you could still do it secretly.
I can see the benefit of the Brexit Party.
Don't laugh,
it's
Kate.
the protest.
I'm coming after you on
the
that.
protest. But I'd like to go back to the Baroness. This is a reason, I'm afraid, with attitudes like this, why we have so much distrust of politicians in the country. You are a democracy denier. It appears like you only like democracy or believe in democracy if you like the result. You wouldn't try to overturn the result if the result had been Remain.
I look at this situation and basically say, did people have the full facts in front of them? And
that's so sanctimonious. You're making out that you know better than the
I didn't
public.
have the full facts in front of me. Neither did you. Neither did anybody sitting in this room or listening, because we have learnt so much.
People understood the basics about sovereignty and getting back control.
Hang on.
If you think I'm wrong, why not support a people's vote?
Hang on. When there are
as long as no deal's on there.
If there are four male voices in the studio, it's always difficult to differentiate between them. It is equally the same with four female voices, which is an argument against all female panels, I guess. Rachel Sylvester, you were dying to get in.
I think there is an issue about the clash of different forms of democracy that we're seeing at the moment. So the representative democracy in the House of Commons, where people are elected to give their opinions. So Kate Hoey, for example, can take a different view to her constituents on Brexit. Some of them, majority of them. But then that clashes with the sort of direct democracy of the referendum. So I think it is quite hard to see how you get beyond that without another
except that we voted for that. We voted to say to the people, this is a referendum, this is your once-in-a-lifetime chance. We saw everybody say, we will listen, we will deliver. So there was no doubt about it. That was
But you can't say that it's anti-democratic or betrayal of the people to ask the people. Although I do think Andrea's got a good point that you have to have an option that the Brexiteers think is a real Brexit.
Because everyone, Susan, would you not agree that whatever is on the ballot paper, the whole country has to buy into that? It can't be perceived by one side or the other as a rigged referendum.
I wouldn't want a rigged referendum, but I would want that. We need to have clarity.
We may have a question on this, I've been told in my ear, so let's not go down that road. But just before we go to a break, isn't the simple truth, Kate and Andrea, that had you both and your colleagues supported the Prime Minister's deal, we would now legally be out of the EU. And it's you two and your colleagues that have meant that we are not outside the EU.
We would have been half in, half out.
Well, it's better than fully in, isn't it?
No, it's not. Because in the end, it would have been name in name only, and we would have been laying ourselves open to break up the United Kingdom in terms of Northern Ireland.
I'm a unionist, as in the fact, I want to keep Britain together in its entirety, and as Brexiteers, we champion in Northern Ireland, and so we want to ensure that we stay together. But also on top of that, the government are putting these lines out. They're getting ministers to put these lines out as well. But we cannot vote for something which actually ties us close to the EU. It's easier to get out in its current format than it is with a withdrawal agreement. So how can we actually vote for anything like that? We'll
go to a break in a second, but don't forget, while we're on a break, you can switch us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and on our website, lbc.co.uk, if you'd like to see what we're doing as well as listen to what we're doing. And also, do keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Top marks to the @Uber UK driver who battled the traffic to get my disabled mum home, then messaged to let me know she was safe. #great service. That was a tweet from John Preston. To all the drivers changing the way the world moves, we couldn't have said it better. Uber. Where to?
The feel of hot rubber on tarmac. The smell of petrol in your nostrils. High-quality adventures need high-quality tyres. Michelin tyres. Tyres that run for miles. Tyres that fun for miles. A tyre that makes other tyres cry when they look in the mirror. The type of...
Yeah, we've only got 30 seconds. That'll do.
For long-lasting performance, choose Michelin tyres. Available from the experts at QuickFit. Get a free tyre safety check at your local centre now.
Have you ever bought an investment sold by Barclays, Halifax, Lloyds, Santander or any other bank or financial advisor? Investments like stocks and shares ISAs, investment bonds and certain types of pension can be risky. If you lost money with one of these investments, you could be owed thousands of pounds in compensation. Even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, here at Goodwin Barrett we can still help. To start your free assessment with Goodwin Barrett, text GOOD to 60777. That's GOOD to 60777.
So, what's everyone got for lunch then?
Just a sandwich? Yeah, I've got the same boring sandwiches yesterday.
Oh,
what have you got?
A refreshingly smooth Costa iced latte, a tasty mozzarella and sun-dried tomato pasta salad, and a bag of fancy hand-cooked crisps.
Why have the same thing every day? Pop into Costa Coffee for lunch and pick up your favourite hot or iced coffee with our delicious lunch deal, just £4.95. Costa's lunch deal available between 11 and 2. Visit costa.co.uk for full terms and participating stores.
Alexa, who is the greatest female athlete ever?
The jury's still out on that one.
Alexa, is Jessica Ennis-Hill the greatest female athlete?
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Come on, Alexa, do you even like athletics?
I don't have a body.
Take out Vitality Health Insurance today and we'll give you an Amazon Echo Dot, like Jess here. You also get an Amazon Smart Plug. And to find your inner athlete, enable the Alexa Vitality skill for fitness and nutrition tips. To get your Amazon bundle today, just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. New member offer available on certain Vitality plans until 30th of June 2019. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
Many people struggle with loose and missing teeth. Often their dentist has told them nothing can be done. Let the TDC team restore your teeth, your smile and your confidence with our award-winning Smile in a Day dental implant treatment. Book your free consultation today. Visit smileinaday.co.uk.
TDC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
21 minutes past 8. Let me reintroduce my panel to you in case you've just tuned in. Andrea Jenkyns is Conservative MP for Morley and Outwood. Baroness Susan Kramer, Liberal Democrat peer. Kate Hoey, Labour MP, co-chair of Labour Leave. And Rachel Sylvester, columnist for The Times. Let's go to our next question. Ryan's in Hull. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Ian. Hi.
Hi, what's your question?
My question is, given that a new Tory leader, if they wanted to advocate for no deal, is going to have to call a general election at some point this year, given the Commons' aversion to no deal. So assuming that a general election happens, surely the question of the panel is, surely we should be reaching out to Nigel Farage, and we could put Labour out of business for a generation if we got him to stand in Labour-only marginal seats. Should we reach out to Nigel Farage for no deal under a new Tory leader?
Well, that's an interesting one. Crispin Blunt floated this on the television a couple of nights ago, and I thought there was no conceivable planet on which that would happen. Rachel Sylvester, you've been watching the Tory party for a long time. What do you reckon?
Well, it just depends on who's the leader, doesn't it? And what direction the Tories go. I think they've got a very big choice facing them. Do they want to become effectively UKIP party, UKIP Light, or do they want to still try and stay on the centre ground? And I think
but that assumes that Brexit is a right-wing project, doesn't it? Which I imagine Kate wouldn't agree with.
Well, I think they are definitely veering towards the more UKIP. Well, no, UKIP is or Brexit party side of things. I do think it's. They are going in that direction and moving away from the centre ground. And if it's Boris Johnson or Dominic Raab, he would mop up a lot of the Brexit Party or UKIP voters. Is Nigel Farage going to be destroyed by that? Yes, he would, I think. Whether or not they need to do a deal with him is another question. But I don't think that's really where the Tory party's long-term electoral interests lie, because they have to reach out to people on the other side of the debate too.
Now, Kate, you've got to know Nigel Farage quite well over the last few years. You've appeared on a lot of platforms with him, I think. What do you think a new Tory leader should do?
Well, I think Rich was right. It depends who gets it. I won't have a vote in that election.
No, amazingly.
I won't.
Nor will I.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you won't. And I think that it would be inconceivable for the Conservatives to vote now for a leader that is not a genuine believer in leaving the EU. I think if they go back to another kind of person who's going to say it, I define it by somebody who actually campaigned to leave, really, or certainly voted to leave.
What about the Brexiteers in the cabinet who sort of, as someone said, dipped their hands in the blood of Chequers? Do you regard them as proper Brexiteers?
I think if they campaigned to vote to leave initially in the referendum and they're taking cabinet responsibility in some cases, and of course if they'd all left, well, who knows what she would have come up with. So I think there was a kind of duty almost for some to stay in until the stage where the whole thing collapses. I think the question of a general election is very important. I mean, I do think that we will have a general election before 2022, one way or the other. Whether that's going to be necessarily in the interest of Labour, I'm not sure either. But it's Nigel Farage. It appeals to people who want politics and politicians to be straight and to say what they think and not to shilly-shally and sit on a fence. And I'm afraid there are too many MPs and politicians generally, who've sat on the fence on.
Well, one thing you can't accuse Andrea Jenkyns of is sitting on the fence. So, Andrea, would your advice to a new Tory leader be to reach out to Nigel Farage?
Well, first of all, I want to say to Ryan, hi, you're from my neck of the woods, or my family from Hull. So back to this question and your question, really. We've already been working cross-party, like Kate said. I mean, both Kate and I have been on a platform with Nigel Farage on the Leave Means Leave rallies up and down the country. And so we have been working cross-party anyway for the Brexit cause. I'm sure that will continue because, Brexiteers will unite just as Remainers unite with their cross-parties too. Now,
not a lot of evidence of that happening, but we'll come on to that with Susan in a moment.
Absolutely. So I agree with Kate in the fact that it must be a Brexiteer who's leading the party. I think it'd be political suicide for us if we didn't.
And your choice would be?
Well, I'm backing Dominic Raab. I was his PPS. He was on the Brexit committee at the inception, like I was. Is a very sharp mind, is very intellectual, and is a true Brexiteer. He believes in Brexit, but also is more than Brexit. I mean, I'm big on social mobility, and that's a big thing for him. He comes from a family of a Jewish immigrant. His father died when he was very young, and so it is more than just Brexit. But I do think, especially if whoever the final two are in the leadership contest, if there's a Brexiteer on there, I'd be very surprised if they didn't get the ticket to become the leader.
Can I ask, why have you swapped from Boris Johnson to Dominic Raab? Is there something you've seen in Boris that you didn't like?
I mean, I'm a big fan of Boris, and
not big enough apparently.
No, but Boris or Dominic, got the ticket. I think it's important that he's a Brexiteer. I went on to Dominic, having had that personal relationship working with him. I really did get to know, and when I knew he was standing, I thought I want to support Dominic.
Has he got the stardust? Has he got the emotional intelligence to be a leader?
He's got the emotional intelligence. Dominic, let's see. Boris has got the Stardust, and Dominic, he's very much a can-do. I know when he was preparing even for tea room surgeries with members of our own party, the research that he'd do, he'd want to help and get things right for people. So is what a person who's very detailed, which we need somebody in the next stage of negotiations who reads the stuff, because it's very important to get the next stage.
And would you advise him to reach out to Nigel Farage?
I don't think he necessarily needs to reach out. I think what's going to happen is, if ever there's a general election, I think that's a time when you decide as a leader to reach out. I think what's going to happen is, I do think Brexiteers, full stop, must work together to ensure we do deliver Brexit.
Okay. Susan?
I will oppose nationalist populist politics with every breath in my body, and if the Conservative Party moves onto that territory, I will fight them even harder. Obviously, it's for the Conservative Party to decide where it goes.
No wonder people are
I find
switching
it quite fascinating to see the new break, the break in the two major parties.
Unbelievable.
I tell you, I will take that stand to the last. You may not, but I will.
And actually, quite a lot of Conservative MPs say the same. I've spoken to, 12 to 15 Tory MPs, if there was some kind of deal with Farage, would leave the party. Ian, you probably pick up the same.
But can I say, you say nationalist.
Yes,
Actually,
it's not the deal, it's your language about being a nationalist.
I think I'm describing Farage and his views fairly accurately, and certainly those of UKIP, and that's what the conversation was.
Well,
and the question was, I said, if they move on to that territory, if that's where they choose to go, I will fight them even harder.
Why is it perfectly acceptable to be described as a nationalist when you're on the left, a Scottish nationalist? No one accuses them of doing anything wrong, and yet anything vaguely to do with the right, and when nationalism is mentioned, it's considered a bad thing.
Well, I'm a unionist when it comes to dealing with Scotland, just as I'm, in a sense, if you like, a unionist in terms of looking at this broad collaboration across the EU. I've certainly tackled them on those kinds of issues, and always have and always will.
But they're considered mainstream because they're on the left, not the right.
I believe in working with across nations, across nationalities.
Well, so do Brexiteers.
Both, but in a completely different way.
No, we see our borders beyond EU. You see your borders as the EU. Yeah. We see global Britain.
No, we don't see our borders as within the EU, but what we see is absolutely crucial that we have this collaboration, very close, common perspective with the EU. Everybody has different experiences.
What about the Commonwealth countries as well?
That's a warm relationship with the Commonwealth countries. I think absolutely delightful. But I believe that for peace and prosperity in the long term, we have to make sure that we bring peace and prosperity across Europe. I've lost too many family members in too many wars.
The EU project does not work. We've seen the rise of the far right across Europe.
And I want to challenge.
And the reason is because of the way the EU has worked.
Yes.
That's why we're seeing that, because the EU has proved to be anti-democratic.
The vast majority we have to go to the news.
Right wing.
We have to go to the news.
And I will fight the right wing.
James, I think you've made that very clear, Susan. James says, this is the first time, Ian, that I've watched LBC live on screen. A nice spacious studio, but what is that hanging down behind you? Is it a spider? I keep looking. There's nothing behind me, I don't think. But if you want to look to see what's behind me, even though there is nothing behind me apart from a lovely logo, you can do so on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and on our website at lbc.co.uk. More questions to our panel in just a moment. It's 8:31. Rachel Gerrish has the LBC News headlines.
The government's going to investigate reality TV shows and how they treat their guests after the death of 2 Love Island stars and a man who'd been on Jeremy Kyle. ITV's now cancelled the Kyle show for good. Nearly 6 in 10 people asked in a Sky poll say they agree with the decision. The world's biggest tech companies like Facebook and Google have met with world leaders in Paris and agreed to do more to stop violent and terrorist content from being shared online. It's after the New Zealand mosque shootings were live streamed. And Stoke City footballer Saido Berahino has been given a 2.5-year driving ban and a £75,000 fine for drink driving. A judge ignored his defence that he'd been trying to escape armed robbers in London's West End. LBC weather, a clear and cold night ahead for most. Some mist and thick fog in the northeast of England and north of Scotland, though, and a low of 6 degrees.
This is LBC.
OK, guys, as promised, here's my signature caprese salad with fresh Galbani mozzarella.
In Italy, we say Galbani.
Yeah, Glabrani, topped with fresh basil and drizzled with a perfect balsamic dressing. Mwah.
No, it's Galbani. Galbani mozzarella.
Well, that's what I said. Glabrani.
Galbani.
Galbanani.
Oh, my Galbani. For proper Italian mozzarella, it's got to be Galbani.
Right now at Vodafone, enjoy 4 times more data on the brilliant iPhone XR and other pay monthly phones. Get more tunes pumping, get more FaceTimes rolling, get more apps apping, more maps mapping, more emojis emojiing, and more box set binging in stunning HD.
That's 4 times more data with 60 gig for the price of 15 on a range of pay monthly phones, including the brilliant iPhone XR. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone. For terms and exclusions, see vodafone.co.uk.
Just had one of the best Uber rides ever with this guy. Went out of his way showing me all the sights of London. Literally the best. Hashtag superstar service. That was a tweet from Hugh Roberts. To all the drivers changing the way the world moves, we couldn't have said it better. Uber. Where to?
Get yourself in pole position with up to £1,000 extra of the list price of your new Renault car. Lap it up at the Renault sales event from 17th to 27th May. Search Renault offers today.
New cars ordered 17th to 27th May and registered by 30th June. £1,000 Kadjar, Koleos, £500 on all other cars, excluding Traffic Passenger and Twizy. Selected vehicles while stocks last. Retail customers at participating dealers only.
Get in pole position and get up to £1,000 off the list price on your new Renault car at the Renault Retail Group sales event. Don't miss the action from the 17th to the 27th of May. Find your nearest dealer at renaultretail.co.uk and get up to £1,000 off your next Renault. Selected vehicles while stocks last, conditions apply.
Imagine getting all kinds of rewards just by going about your everyday shopping. Earn points every time you spend, then use your points to get the things you actually want. Filling up at the petrol station could lead to getting your hands on the latest fashion, and supermarket checkout could even take you to airport check-in. Use points to get whatever it is you want. Let's make life more rewarding with the American Express Preferred Rewards Gold Credit Card. Don't live life without it. Representative 57.6% APR variable. Annual fee applies after the first year. Terms apply. 18 plus, subject to approval. Search Amex Gold.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:34. Aidan in South London has texted, did have a little laugh as your guest discussed who would and who wouldn't do a deal with Nigel Farage. A lot of them won't be there to do a deal because his party will have your seats. Well, there you go. Let me reintroduce my panel. Baroness Susan Kramer, Liberal Democrat peer, Andrea Jenkyns, Conservative MP, Kate Hoey, Labour MP, and Rachel Sylvester, columnist for The Times. And you can watch us live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and on our website at lbc.co.uk. I have a couple of you have said, could you ask panellists not to talk over each other? I have asked twice now, so I'm not going to ask a third time. Three strikes and you're out. Gary is in Orsett in Essex. Hello, Gary.
Hiya. My question is, obviously Parliament can't decide what to do. Now, you can't ignore the first referendum because that would end democracy in the country. So to have a second vote, surely the only 2 questions on it should be leave with no deal or leave with May's deal. That way the first referendum's been listened to, and then the next one will decide exactly how we leave, because it's clear that Parliament cannot do it. And we can't keep going on like this, because it's no good for our businesses and industries that are trying to make money. And I want to know what the panel think about it, please.
I think it's a really interesting question. This comes on the back of what Emily Thornberry said to me yesterday, where she said she would not accept no deal being on a second referendum ballot paper. Now, we've kind of covered this a little bit in over the last half an hour, but Susan Kramer, are there no circumstances that you think, I mean, say, for example, you had a 2-question ballot paper, Leave versus Remain, so you could judge, compare it with the first referendum, and then if Leave got the majority, then you ask a second question, deal or no deal. Would that be acceptable to you?
I'm less caught up with all of this, but what I would want is that if there's a no deal, it has to be with clarity about what that means. Because again, I go into all kinds of different groups and I hear a different meaning for what on earth it is, where we go afterwards, what we're trying to do and whatever else. So I don't think anything should go on the ballot paper that isn't backed up by real clarity about what the programme is. People know what Remain is, and we can be asked and questioned and get coherent answers about that. that. May is coherent about her deal, even though I completely disagree with it. And I don't see that the other position yet has coherence. And I think that is the necessity for a referendum. Get a hold of referendum. People must know what it is about.
What
and that's
is it?
why I tend towards a May deal that as a Leave deal. The other thing is, Parliament has ruled out no deal over and over and over again. And I know there's this sense of, well, we should simply dismiss Parliament. I don't. It's been the backbone of our democracy, and I think we start dismissing it at our peril.
What is there about Theresa May's deal that you particularly take exception to?
My problem is that it's the whole sense of the future that we have absolutely no clarity on where we go afterwards. We'll be out, but we have absolutely no clarity on where we go. And I find that completely unacceptable. Whether it's dealing with Northern Ireland, whether it's dealing with the customs union, whether it's dealing with regulations, what I don't want is a transition period that is essentially a time that is then used by companies simply to adjust to moving their businesses over to continental Europe, because the damage to our economy would be fundamental. So I want clarity about the end.
Kate Hoey.
Well, I don't see the need for another referendum, and I don't understand why anyone thinks that it would make any difference and change, as we've already said. And in the end, we would be back in the same position. So Gary's right about Parliament, and I personally would, while I don't want another referendum, because I think it is just going to add to the uncertainty that we've been talking about, but if we're going to have one, then Remain cannot be on the table. I mean, it's just ludicrous that we would have another one with Remain. It would have to be the Prime Minister's deal or a WTO arrangement. And I think that I have.
But Kate,
I don't fear another referendum.
There is evidence that the polls have shifted a bit, not a huge amount, but most of the polls now show a small Remain majority. Does that not indicate to you that Remain would have to be on the ballot paper? Because otherwise, as I say, surely the whole country has to buy in what the questions are.
Remember, in just a few days before the last referendum, the polls were showing a big win for Remain. So, I think we all have a bit of scepticism about polls. Usually people like to put them forward when they're saying what they want them to say. But in the end, I think I don't fear another referendum, because I do think people are even angrier now, will come out even more to vote. I was worried that if we would have another referendum, people would say, we voted first time, you've ignored us, why should we bother? And I also met people who were literally in tears that they were voting for the first time, and they felt so proud of the fact they were doing that. And that may sound silly to people sitting here in London, but actually it was hugely important. So I think we would win by an even bigger majority, and then we're back to where we are.
Rachel?
And that's why it's a waste of time.
The main reason I think you have to have Remain on the ballot paper is that this is one issue where there's such a huge generational divide, and young people are overwhelmingly, something like 80% of 18 to 24-year-olds are in favour of staying in the EU. And to have a policy, there's no other policy, I think, where you have such an age gap and a difference between the different ages, and to exclude an opinion that is so overwhelmingly supported by the young, I think would be very dangerous democratically. And I think therefore you have to have that option. But I agree with you, Iain, it has to be something, if there is going to be another referendum, that the whole country buys into. If the Brexiteers really believe that the country's on the side of Brexit, then it shouldn't be a worry. If Kate thinks that the result would be the same, then that shouldn't be a problem for the Brexiteers.
But of course, there is no majority in Parliament for another referendum.
No, there isn't at the moment. But I mean, I
there's
think
not a majority for anything.
No.
So.
But I sort of think the more you get into the situation of deadlock in Parliament, the only way out of the whole mess is to send it back to the people who began this whole thing.
No, I think we will find, as we saw today, Maria Miller changing, basically saying if the agreement doesn't go through next time, well, then we need to go out on no deal. I think we'll see more and more people will actually come round to the fact that we could have been out now on it. We could have been out on but we don't have to vote for it in the end if we have a Brexit Prime Minister who's prepared to go ahead with it.
By triggering Article 50 actually MPs
for no
voted
deal.
for no deal,
But
didn't they?
do you think, because the new Prime Minister came in and said we're going to go out with no deal without any kind of parliamentary vote, do you think that would be acceptable?
Rachel, you talked about democracy, and so did Baroness Kramer, about Parliament, and Parliament should lead in parliamentary democracy. The reality is people voted for a no deal if there wasn't an agreement, and there wasn't an agreement, so we should have been leaving, and by now, if we'd left on March the 29th, we would probably be involved in very detailed talks about a genuine free trade deal with the European Union. It's
just quite an important point whether or not, if Boris or Raab came in and wanted to go to no deal, wouldn't they have to put that to a parliamentary vote? Do you think? No? They would just crash out without a vote? Wouldn't that be...
Crash out? You see, these are the language of the Remainers, and the Times newspaper, Rachel, with great respect that you work for, has done nothing but paint the picture of the dire disaster.
But on
that
the question, would you do it without a parliamentary vote?
Yeah, I would, because people have voted. We gave the decision to the people, and they didn't.
Just before I go to Andrea, someone says, how can I watch the live video? Just go to the LBC website. It's right there on the front page. You've got my ugly bug staring out at you. Spider. Just click on my face. Andrea, Martin in Yorkshire has tweeted, what sort of things have the whips done to try to make Andrea vote for Theresa May's deal?
Oh, we can't talk about that.
You may not.
No, what have they done? Well, they've done nothing. Well, let's see. They're trying to put pressure on, not the whips, so to speak, but, we've had the party chairman hint that my marginal seat funding will be removed, and I just said, do your worst. I raised most of the money in the lead-up to the 2015 campaign anyway. But I want to just move off that. Just want to move back to something that, Baroness said.
I am Susan to everybody here.
Well, that's fine. Right, you've had your talk now, so I'm going to talk as well. Right, so Susan said, dismiss Parliament at its peril. I'm sorry, but, dismiss the British public at its peril. They've had a vote, and you said earlier regarding, over your dead body, so to speak, about the rise of nationalism and the far right. It's actually, my seat was Labour for 85 years, and it's salt of the earth, hard-working communities who felt that they are the forgotten communities. There's nothing hard right about that. They're just patriotic people. Our St George's Day, we have 8,000 people lining the streets, St George on horseback, and it's wonderful. And they too want to be part of the Union of the UK. So it's nothing like that. Now back to your question regarding.
Deal.
Should it be deal or no deal?
Should a deal or no deal? Sorry, it's getting passionate, going off at a tangent there. We've triggered Article 50. The majority of Parliament triggered Article 50, which meant, we'll leave on no deal if we don't come up with a.
But Parliament has voted to not do that now.
Yeah, well, but I'm sorry, but the Prime Minister.
So do you just ignore that?
Well, yes, we do.
I mean, you've been a big advocate of parliamentary. Well, you're a big advocate of parliamentary sovereignty, but only when it suits you.
No, that's not true, because let's also.
Well, if there is a parliamentary vote ruling out no deal, how can you then respect that parliamentary vote if you say, well, we're going to ignore it?
But there was a parliamentary vote ruling in no deal.
Yeah, but also the Prime Minister has ignored it anyway, because she made the big decision herself to extend the Article 50 date. There was no Parliament involvement there. So, it's in the gift. So, is that acceptable? But it's not acceptable to do no deal.
But for a Prime Minister to do something completely contrary to what Parliament has voted, I think would be pretty unconstitutional.
Well, she's going against what the public voted.
Susan?
As is Parliament.
Yeah. Sorry, I think Parliament has been absolutely clear where it stands on no deal. No deal is completely unacceptable. You asked me earlier what my feeling was about May's deal. I am a Remainer. The Liberal Democrats are Remainers. We are the party to vote for if you want to stop Brexit. Really? And we'll continue to take that battle forward.
That 25%
I would be stunned if there wasn't Remain on a people's choice ballot.
25% of Liberal Democrat voters voted Leave. The Liberal Democrat chairman of Sir Ed Davies Constituency Association, I gather, has now joined the Brexit Party. You talk as if every single Liberal Democrat is a Remainer. That's simply not the case, is it?
I'm talking the core of our party policy, our manifestos.
So do you not want Brexiteers in your party, Susan? Is that what you're saying?
We are.
Are you saying Brexiteers are not welcome into the Liberal Democrat Party?
I hope that with most Brexiteers we will find...
No, but are you saying that?
No, listen to me. That you can't just set it on those terms. I hope that those people understand that there are many other issues that's about the future of the economy, the climate, whatever else, where we may have a lot of common ground. I hope that there is a lot of common ground amongst people here on issues other than Brexit, but they need to understand we're being totally honest. We are fighting for Remain. We are the party of Remain, and I wouldn't try and kid someone who felt very devoted to Brexit that we were wishy-washy on this at all. I wouldn't want to try and...
So Brexit is not welcome at the Liberal Democrats.
You heard what I said, and you understand that I have common ground.
You do actually have to let me put some questions to you. Andrea Donis said that he didn't, and he said it in the studio, that, and I don't know if you were here, Kate, weren't you? And he said in the studio that his advice to Labour leavers was not to vote Labour because Labour wouldn't deliver leave for them. Is that your advice to Liberal Democrat leavers?
I want to be honest with any Liberal Democrat, anyone who is thinking of voting for us. We are taking an absolutely solid stop Brexit position. I don't want to pretend that we're fudging it. I don't want to pretend we're looking for ways out.
Do you want those people to vote Liberal Democrat?
I want those people to have that knowledge and then to make their own personal decisions.
Right.
If we lose them, I'm sad, but I don't want to pretend to them.
That's clear. We'll take a break now. It's 8:48.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7. LBC.
For the love of all that's holy. You've got a bunch of MPs who are constantly on holiday more than Judith Chalmers. They're incapable of fixing Brexit. You've got an NHS that just about managed to get through the winter. You've got schools in crisis. You've got British Steel about to go to the wall. And they're worrying about Jeremy Kyle. It's like a comedy show.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
What's your perfect London lifestyle? A spacious family home, a short commute, everything within easy reach. You'll find all this and more at Forbury in Blackheath by Berkeley, a limited number of 3-bedroom apartments and 4-bedroom houses in the heart of Blackheath, just 12 minutes from London Bridge by train. Prices start from £815,000 and the show home is available to view. Arrange a viewing at forbury-blackheath.co.uk.
This spring, spend your money as wisely as you spend your time. Discover the Skoda Karoq with up to £1,950 towards your finance deposit, 5.9% APR representative, a service plan for £159 and 3 years roadside assistance. Driven by something different. Skoda. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan, 18s and over subject to status, ordered by July 1st. T's and C's apply, excludes SE Technology. Indemnities may be required. Skoda Financial Services. Visit skoda.co.uk.
Out of bed and... Slippers on, breakfast cooked, lunch packed.
Darling, where are my
keys? Are on the side. Get dressed, shirt on, the right way, leave the house, pop to Costa, order a coffee and... relax with a deliciously smooth cappuccino.
Escape the morning rush with your favourite coffee. Visit your local Costa Coffee today.
Radio, playlists and podcasts.
Where it's all together and all for free.
Global Player. Download it from your App Store now.
Second time an @Uber driver has found my wallet. Forever thankful for honest people in the world. Good karma for sure. That was a tweet from Leighton Williams. To all the drivers changing the way the world moves, we couldn't have said it better than Leighton. So thank you. Uber. Where to?
To all who've travelled with Eurotunnel the shuttle. The outdoorsy types, foodie types, E-types, Jaguars, dogs, cats, alpacas, boot packers, last-minute packers, kitchen sink packers, motorhomes, motorbikers, mountain bikers, surfboarders, snowboarders, crossing borders with feet up on the dashboarders, long legs, first timers, and the let's just take it all in our own timers. It's our 25th birthday, but we're wishing you many happy returns. Join the celebration at Eurotunnel.com.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
9 minutes to 9. I've been waiting for a question that isn't on Europe, and we finally have one. Jamie is in Nottingham. Jamie, what would you like to ask?
Yes, it's a non-Brexit question for you, ladies.
Fantastic.
So, do you see the people who have gone on the Jeremy Kyle show as people who should take responsibility for the way they are viewed by the general public, or do you see them as victims of poverty porn who have been used by Jeremy Kyle and ITV?
Rachel.
This is probably a really, really terrible thing to say, but I've actually never watched the Jeremy Kyle show because I don't want to. I think it's so cruel. I've seen it sort of on in the background in waiting rooms and things, and it's the purpose seems to me to be to humiliate the people who go on, often people who are having a really difficult time in their lives, and it's exploitative. I think it's absolutely the right thing. It's been scrapped, and I would see them in terms of Jamie's question as the victims. Obviously, I'm sure they choose to go on, but they're being exploited.
Could you not make that argument about many television programmes? I would make that argument about X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, what the bailiff ones, whatever they're called.
There's something particularly cruel about Jeremy. It's a sort of the bear baiting. We've banned cockfighting, bear baiting, but we have human baiting. It just feels to me wrong.
Kate,
I have watched it and I don't like it, so I haven't watched it very much. But I would say I think it's amazing that it's been going on for a very long time. I think, and no one's ever I haven't heard this discussed before. So, now everyone's coming out and saying how awful it is and how dreadful it is and why didn't we, and nobody has done anything, and now we've got the select committee looking into it and all of that, so that shows it must be very important what's happened, and it was very tragic what's happened. But what
you're going to have there is a whole group of MPs who've never seen the programme or anything like it, pontificating on it.
But, I do think people choose to go on it, but presumably they're paid, and that has probably been a factor of where tends to be people who are on it who come, who seem perhaps, and I've heard it said, can't afford to have counselling or some of those things that maybe people who have more money would have done and they go on the Jeremy Kyle programme as a kind of therapeutic thing, but it's not. It wouldn't be my cup of tea.
Someone sent in a really good question for the many podcast I do with Jackie Smith every week, and they said, if you were the subject of a Jeremy Kyle episode, what would the episode title be? And I haven't come up with one yet, but I will do for the podcast. Susan.
I mean, I've seen bits of it now and then, and I've hated it. And I'll tell you something, I'm ashamed that I watched it and saw some of this human bear baiting, and I didn't do anything about it. It's a little bit like some of that Me Too movement. I'm thinking, why on earth didn't I raise a question, and why on earth didn't I make a fuss? There may be some people who go on, they can manage it just fine, they can deal with it, they go on, they understand what they're doing. But I just have the sense that so many people go on are really vulnerable. And, we become so aware of issues of mental health, of what that kind of battering does to people deep down in their psyche, their sense of who they are. And I think we're bigger than that, surely. So I'm glad it's off, but I do feel ashamed that I didn't step in and try and raise an issue earlier. I should have.
The thing is that these programmes are highly addictive, and I have seen the programme. I don't think I've ever watched a full episode, but if it's on in the background and I start listening to it or watching,
you can't stop.
I can't stop, and I will watch the rest of it. And there are lots of these sorts of programmes that, there's one of the Australian Border Force programme where the customs officers sort of rip open people's suitcases and find drugs. I find that fascinating, but that is exploitative in exactly the same way. Andrea, several of my callers last night on this, they were saying, well, it's all very well for you middle class people to pontificate about this. Us working class people, we like it because we're watching ourselves.
So you saying this because I'm a working class girl?
No, I'm not.
I don't mind. I'm a working class girl and proud.
You were talking about your constituents, though, and I suspect a lot of your constituents do watch it.
Like you, I've seen it's in the background, and you do want to get to the end of the programme and see. I think they have a lie detector on the end of the programme. But I think there's several elements to this. I think one is the vetting by the producers. It should have been a lot stronger. Maybe
we should have a lie detector on this programme. Now there's a thought.
That'd be good. So I think there's the vetting in the first place. People who come onto these programmes, make sure that they haven't got the mental health problems. I think there's got to be a stronger vetting. But we've also got to face it. We live in that social media world now. Look at it, it's all the selfies type of things. We've seen The Apprentice. Every different topic there's some type of live TV programme about it. So I don't think we're ever going to get away from that. I think we've gone too far. It's got to be the vetting. thing, and we need to make sure actually that, you know, if people are applying for these programmes, that I think it's a responsibility also to make people guide them in different ways. Actually, you need to go and see your GP over stuff like this, or you need, you know, there's relate marriage guidance counsellors. I think we need to be careful we're not exploiting people who are having a really difficult time.
Somebody says, Iain, why is it that most people who are anti the Jeremy Kyle show haven't even watched it? He's got my vote for TV presenter of the year. I don't think he's going to get that. Benedict in Rickmansworth asks, if you could axe one show, what would it be? And the answer is not cross-question. Kate?
Newsnight.
Oh, really? Why?
Oh, I just think it's not... it's only
but
watched.
You go on it.
Well,
you're a hypocrite.
Very, very rarely. They occasionally feel they've got to have somebody on who's a Brexiteer, and usually you're on with lots of people who aren't. But I also think it's watched by people who, on the whole, who are basically London centric, have no
But you know, since Brexit, they've doubled their audience
because they've done a lot more on it. Yeah. But
that's because you and I keep appearing on it.
That might yes, of course, I'd forgotten about that. No, I mean, that came off the tip of my tongue because I'm always having a go about Newsnight. But, you know, to be honest, I don't... As long as they don't take off Coronation Street, which I constantly watch.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. Although some of the storylines at the moment...
I know, they're a bit
dodgy.
silly, but...
Rachel, what would you axe if you had the power?
Maybe I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. I really don't get the point of it. I just don't get the point of it. And all these sort of B, C, D division celebrities getting their 15 minutes of fame that they don't need.
You only say that because you haven't been invited.
Yes.
No, where am I a celebrity? You, on the other hand, Iain, I think you could be next up in the Bush Tucker trial.
Would I do
Would
that?
you do it?
Yeah, you would, Iain.
I don't think they'd let me have the time off here to do it. So the answer's no. Andrea, what would you like to axe?
I won't axe anything. You know, I'm quite...
Oh, come on, answer the question.
No, seriously.
That's a political
what the
answer.
Parliament channel, PMQs. No, I mean, I just think, you know, if people are making programmes, you know, what people enjoy, then just get on with it. Just be a bit more responsible. Yeah.
Susan?
Well, I like the feel-good stuff like Bake Off, when everyone's nice to each other. And frankly, you can take off anything, provided you put on something where people are nice to each other. Life is...
That's a typical Liberal Democrat, let's have a group hug answer.
Yes,
what do you hate? What programmes do you hate? What would you axe?
My problem is I don't turn them on. That's the... I probably would have put, frankly, Jeremy Kyle pretty much at the top of the list there.
Well, I would
I'm cross with myself for not having stopped it.
Casualty is the one that I would take off. It is the bane of my Saturday night where I'm eating and we have to watch Casualty while we're eating, and I'm a bit squeamish about blood, and I keep being told by my partner, well, you do realise it's not real, don't you? But I'm afraid it doesn't do the trick. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming on Cross Question this week. Rachel Sylvester, Kate Hoey, Andrea Jenkyns and Susan Kramer. Next week on the programme, he's just trying to get it up on his computer very, very